Hey everyone, Heavy Metal Steve here. Just hanging out with my pet red-tailed boa, Triss Marigold. Triss, named her after a female character in these books. I'm going to be talking about the Witcher books, mainly because I'm pretty stoked on Netflix getting a show, especially after really liking Game of Thrones before they dropped the ball and that just completely sucked in the last two seasons. Mainly the last season. That's fucked up. But we're not going to talk about that. We're going to be talking about something good. Hopefully, can become a good show as well. After showing the success of some epic fantasy genre, like the Game of Thrones had, which, I'm a big nerd. I'm not afraid to admit it. Got some nerd pride, so I like this shit. But Game of Thrones did pretty well for even people that aren't as nerdy as me. So. Super stoked on Netflix getting green lighted to do a show. Hopefully it becomes a series, because there is a series in this. It's the Blood of Elves, Time of Contempt, Baptism of Fire, the Tower of Swallow, and the Lady of the Lakes. The Tower of Swallows and the Lady of the Lake. And in that series, let's say the main character is Ciri, but in the other books, which are The Last Wish and The Sword of Destiny, those are short stories where you kind of are introduced to the main character, the protagonist, Geralt of Rivia, and then also they got the Season of Storms here, which is completely on its own whole story about something that happens to Geralt when he loses his Witcher swords, and hilarity kind of ensues, and the struggles, and it becomes a pretty epic story just on its own, which is awesome. You can read the short stories, you can read Season of Storms, or you can read you can just straight up read the series from Blood of Elves all the way down, and you don't really need to get filled in too much, because it's basically plays like a movie, which is why I think that it would be a great show if they just followed the books. Netflix just followed the books, they do great. But I believe, from what I know, the Last Wish is going to be what they do, because I think that the producer said that's the only book she read. We'll talk about the Netflix a little bit more. Not too much, because I mainly want to talk about the book, but I didn't think it was going to be very good, because the casting for the main character, Geralt of Rivia, I didn't think Henry Cavill, the Superman, who played in a movie that I absolutely hated, The Man of Steel. It was awful, but I think that's more the director's fault. Because Henry Cavill, I didn't think was going to be the right choice, but after seeing how big of a fan he seems to be and how he really pushed for this role, I saw him answer some questions really good in an interview. I think he's going to pull it off. But anyway, I want to explain a little bit about the games who introduced me to this. Without them, I probably would have never read these. I started playing the second game in 2011, I believe it came out, and really intrigued by the way it looked and the overall feel of it, that medieval, epic fantasy kind of feel that I got when I was a kid and when I discovered Lord of the Rings for the first time. Really fell in love with Tolkien's work, read The Hobbit when I was really young, and then tried to read Lord of the Rings. Kind of it's too hard for me when I was basically just a little kid, and then I read it a bunch, obviously, when I got older. But this is basically Lord of the Rings, where there's it's a world. There's elves, there's dwarves. It's a dark world though, so it's basically Lord of the Rings with a hard MA rating with sexual content. Nothing crazy, not like Game of Thrones first season or anything, but there is some sex in it. Geralt kind of sleeps around, and there is definitely some gory, intense violence, and just overall the dark world. There's a giant war that's going on. People are garbage. It really reminds me of the world that we live in today, where there's greedy kings and shitty politics oppressing people, and it's just this dark world. But it is also full of humor and stuff that makes you laugh, because Andrei Sapkowski, the author, is actually quite funny at times, whether it be a dark humor or just something funny, because he's a pretty funny guy. Even though a lot of people think he's kind of arrogant. He talks about how the video games aren't that great, and he kind of seems to be all about that money. I think I went off track about the games, but I wanted to say that I really loved the second game. Was thrown in a world that was almost too vast with too many characters. Kind of expected to know what they were, but even though I was kind of lost a little bit as I played, I still absolutely loved it. And then when I played the third game, The Witcher 3, that's the best game ever made. I'm not kidding when I say that, and I've played a lot of video games. Best game ever made, for a storyline-driven role-playing game, which is what it is. So it's not all just action or anything. It's a storyline game where you play Geralt, and I was blown away by it so much that I just found out that they're based off of these books, and the books are even better than the game, so they're that good. So I think if Netflix just follows the story of these books portray perfectly, just go off the books, they'll do great, because you can't really go wrong. Don't do it. Well, you got the option with these because Andre actually finished all his books, unlike George R.R. Martin that did the Game of Thrones, which started off pretty good and then ended pretty horribly. But just go off these books, Netflix. They'll be awesome. They're perfect. It basically plays out like a movie as you read it. Pretty much designed for you to make a movie off of. So just TV series anyway. It's basically designed to be a TV series, just the way it's written. It pretty much plays out that way. Well, anyway, I want to talk about some of the main characters. Main one being the Witcher himself, Geralt of Rivia, the protagonist, or one of them. He is a monster slayer. He was trained to do so through basically how people become Witchers are their orphan children that are brought to this Witcher school, in this case Kaer Morhen castle in the mountains, where Geralt loses his swordplay. He learns his swordplay, and he learns techniques and basically acrobatics and agility and dexterity, pretty much what he'll need to do to fight these inhuman beasts that all they know is to kill and live. So his job is, and all the Witcher's job is, to pretty much travel the world, slay monsters for coin, without much other purpose in life. So if the orphan child that becomes a Witcher shows promise through his swordplay and his agility and some training that they do around the castle, then they go through this mutation where their genetics change, their anatomy changes, so they're basically not fully human anymore, and they get pretty much pieced into a little bit of monsters themselves in order to defeat these monsters, where their reflexes get even stronger, and their vision is even better, and they live a little longer. They're immune to diseases and toxins to a certain degree. They they know alchemy. They can make potions, and they use them to their advantage before a fight or a battle. They drink these nasty potions that would kill an average person, and they give them. They're basically like high on drugs or something, so they can see in the dark or whatever they need to do to fight these beasts. And they know some lesser magic. They use these Witcher signs to some lesser magic. They know these Witcher signs that they can cast a few spells to fight monsters as well, but they're nothing compared to some of the sorcerers and sorceresses of the Witcher world. And I think even Geralt's love interest, and on and off again girlfriend Yennefer Vengerberg could probably kill him pretty easily if she wanted to, because she knows some powerful magic, and he just knows how to kick ass with a sword. And that's one of the things I like about Geralt and the Witchers in general is Geralt is a badass, but he's not so badass where you know he's going to be okay when he's even in a bar fight with like 10 people. He can die. He can die pretty easily. An arrow to the neck or a proper shot could kill him. Even though he fights these unnatural monstrosities in the world, a sword can kill him. He's not that badass, and that's one of the charming things about Geralt is he can die at any moment, pretty much, and you don't think that they're gonna kill Geralt, but you never know. Well, anyway, Geralt is the Witcher. He became a Witcher the way I explained, and he has his basically what he believes his daughter, the main character I say in the series. It's not his real daughter, but she becomes a Witcher through that code as well. The child surprise, his child of destiny, where he did somebody a favor, fulfilled a contract, and wasn't able to be paid through money, but with the code that they do, they get to take the child to become a Witcher, even though it's not much of a spoiler, but he never collects her as payment, but through fate and destiny, something that Geralt struggles to believe exists because he just sees this dark world every day, that fate and destiny doesn't exist, but it shows that Ciri ends up with him anyway. She becomes a Witcher. She learns how to be a Witcher from him. That's basically all he knows, and he kind of thinks of her as a daughter, and so does Yennefer, because they can't have children. He's sterile as a Witcher, and she's barren as a powerful sorceress that uses magic all the time. They explain that in the books. They explain everything in the books. They don't leave stuff out, which is something that I really expect about this epic fantasy genre and like high sci-fi, where they explain so much that they don't leave anything out. They just don't go, this is a guy with superpowers and he shoots lasers out of his eyes, but I'm not going to explain why. You don't need to know. Explain everything. And if they don't explain anything, it's probably because they're waiting for the right time to explain that later to shock you or give you some interesting information. So Ciri is Geralt's child of destiny, but she's not just some average person. She's not only is she have royal blood, not only is she highborn, she's the princess and sole hire of Sintra, which was basically, I'm not going to talk about that because that's a little bit, it's not really too much of a spoiler, but still, basically she's Princess of Sintra, but also through fate ends up with Geralt, learns how to be a Witcher, never goes through the trial. She's too important to get put through that, because during the trial where they become Witchers, only like 2 out of 10 children survive that trial, and she has this genetic that this gene, this ancient elven gene, I believe, the elder blood, deep in her DNA, that everybody, all the antagonists, want to use for their advantage to conquer the world and possibly even the galaxy. She doesn't really know how to use this power yet, but she learns a little later, or barely figures it out. But they know that these people that want her think that they know how to use her blood or her power, or whatever way they're going to use her to pretty much conquer their evil needs. And Geralt can't let that happen. He can't. He's got to protect her from the baddies. And yeah, if I haven't said it, it's a dark world where it's just graphic. It's Lord of the Rings with a hard MA rating, and Ciri has had it pretty rough. She's on the run. Geralt's after her, and it's basically, it kind of has like a Dungeons and Dragons feel to it too, where there's like different classes that are around with Geralt. Like he's got like a ranger with him, and kind of like a knight character, like a paladin fighter, and like a rogue, and Bard, his buddy Dandelion, a huge character. He's a famed poet and artist, singer. He's plays the lute, and he's famed, if not just as famed as Geralt, probably even more so through his ballads. Geralt and his adventures with Geralt. Geralt gets put into the eyes of the public. People don't really like Witchers too much. They don't think that they really belong in this day and age, and their ancient past is what they are. They belong in the past when that was necessary, and there's not as many monsters of today, but it's a well-known saying that in this world, people are even more wicked than these beasts that Geralt slays. So he ends up, even though he's not into politics and he doesn't give a shit about him, he always gets thrown into it somehow. Even though he remains neutral, he doesn't really give a crap. He always gets thrown into the mix, and he has to deal with like greedy kings and all this politics that he hates so much. And he just wants to chill, but he just can't because, he's Geralt of Rivia. So we know Ciri is Geralt's child of destiny, and she's got the Elder Blood. She's a Witcher. She can fight. She can defend for herself. She can fend for herself. And Geralt. And then I was talking about one of the main other characters, the on and off again girlfriend, love interest of Geralt. She's a sorceress, very powerful, very intelligent, and that makes Geralt, he's pretty well read too. He read a lot of books in Kaer Morhen about fighting monsters, and he's read a lot of books to impress Yennefer. She's super smart, and she just being a powerful mage. Mages and sorcerers are held in high regard in the world, and they're usually advisors to kings and stuff. And Yennefer's pretty well known as well. So you got Geralt, you got Dandelion, you got Yennefer, and you got Ciri. Yeah, I named my snake here Triss Marigold, who is another sorceress that Geralt has kind of a love affair with. I don't know if that's the main reason why Geralt and Yennefer just can't make it happen. Throughout the books, they obviously love each other, but somehow they just never works out. They keep trying and fuck it up, and she seems to hate him at times. And then again, they love each other, but they can't make it work somehow, and it just can't happen. But they would like it to, and they dream of it, but they can't. So that's all in the books. It's not a giant love story, but it's definitely in there, as all fantasy is, and any really good works of art are. I'll talk about some more stuff in here in a second. I guess I'm just really stoked for it to become a TV show. Definitely has potential to be something amazing. It has its own essence and feel behind it, like kind of like you get when you think of like Star Wars. And when you first watch that, you get this overall feel of what Star Wars is, and it has this feeling that you get when you think of it. Same with the Lord of the Rings. And I would say it's a pretty intelligent read. The author's definitely well knowledged about medieval time period, and the weaponry, horses, and everything. Pretty much talks about the plants, and he's just well knowledge guy. And then at times it would probably be a difficult read, if you're not big into really big storyline stuff, because there's times when it's just like politics being spoken by like kings and advisors, and much like Game of Thrones, which did well, and espionage and all this stuff going on with side characters, and well, the main characters are doing their stuff, and that's what you really want to dig into. Maybe because there'll be something so exciting happening, which will hang you on the edge of your seat. You're like reading it, you're watching it unfold, and you're getting really into it, and then it will cut to another completely different scene, maybe with a different feel altogether, and then you'll get into that, or you're like, oh, I want to know what's going on over here some more, and it might even take forever to get there because it might jump into different people's stories, and then when you get there, you're like, all right, let's fucking do this, and that will be awesome. Everybody will get their own little thing, and you'll fall in love with the characters, and it just has potential of being awesome. So much so that make a nerdy ass shitty video about it. But yeah, hopefully it all works out and becomes a big thing. Play the video games, read the books. I'm super into them. Peace out, guys.